Hey everybody, it's Bill Treasurer. Welcome to the second edition of Two Boys and a Dad Learning About Leadership. And today we have their very first guest, because they're not going to learn all that much from me, their dad. We're going to be learning together. So they requested the first guest be my co-author and friend, Captain John Havlik, Navy SEAL. John, join the video. And here we go. There's Captain Havlik. And here's my boys, my 15-year-old Alex and my 12-year-old Ian. And
hello, Alex and Ian.
What do you say, guys? What do you want to tell Captain Havlik before we get started?
Thanks for being on the show while we're in this very second episode.
Well, thank you for the invite.
And Ian, what do you have to say?
I don't know.
How about thank you for your service for 30 years to this country? How about that? For keeping you safe and protecting your freedoms. So just so the viewers know, John Havlik is my co-author. He and I are college buddies. We went to West Virginia University and we were on the swimming and diving team, almost 40 years ago. And John was the assistant coach when I was a member of the team. Fast forward a little bit of time, John went off and became a Navy SEAL. And he was a SEAL for about 30 years in the armed forces, and has served on all SEAL teams. And you can look up the different SEAL teams, classified and unclassified. And John is a great friend, and he is the co-author of our new book, The Leadership Killer, Reclaiming Humility in an Age of Arrogance. And really the whole book hinges on John's story, which you'll find really interesting, folks. But my boys requested John as the first guy to learn from, the first guest, about leadership. So John, thanks for being on the second edition of this vlog, I guess we call it. So
thanks, Bill. Got heavy burden, heavy responsibility here.
You do. Hey, so with that in mind, I'll drop a first question while the boys are formulating. Boys are formulating the question in their head. You can see Ian chewing on a question right now, and so is Alex apparently. But my question to you is, if you were going to give a tip to kids starting out that wanted to activate their leadership, where would be some good places to start?
Join a sports team, join a school club, and volunteer to be the leader. You know, don't be afraid to, don't just sit in the crowd. Take the first step up there and volunteer to be the leader and start leading from day one.
Good advice. So Alex, I'll give you the first question to John. So you know he's got a rich naval experience and with special forces and such. Here's your opportunity to learn from a guy for 30 years was in the SEALs. What's the most important question you want to ask him to learn about leadership?
So when you were a captain on the team, it's on your Navy team, what was one of the, you had to control your team between life and death, and that's a lot of stress to hold on one person.
Yep. What did I do?
I mean, how did you deal with the stresses of having life and death on your hands with your team and putting other people's lives in your hands?
Well, it was part of the job. You know, I asked for it and I volunteered for it. I trained for it. Hopefully I had enough experience that I can make the right decision. But what I found was very important was that I used to include the guys in the planning process so that everybody had a say in what we were going to do and everybody had a piece of the puzzle. And so usually there was no surprises, and it worked out very effectively because then everybody was planning, everybody was coming up with the right way of doing it.
Hey, John, tell them also about the importance of what-ifing. It sounds like you, in terms of preparation to try to mitigate the risk, and Murphy, as you've talked about before. Tell them a little bit about Murphy and the importance of what ifing.
Well, we did a lot of planning, because our stuff was high risk and it had a lot of visibility. But we would, in our mission planning, we usually briefed 3 different courses of action. Usually one made sense, one was a little different, one was just kind of out there, worst case scenario. And we would do a lot of planning on that, pick the best course of action, and then the one course of action we would pick, we would tear it apart. And what if it to death? What if the radios went out? What if we lose so many guys? What if one helicopter can't get in and only half the squad can get in? Can we still do the mission? Can we do this? And that was real important to do, because as I've stated many times in my presentation, you can plan, but as soon as you leave the gate, there's this guy named Murphy out there waiting to mess it all up, and he usually puts his nose in when you least expect it. So you have to plan for the unexpected and think of all the options that you can when you're going out.
Yeah, good. Ian, I know now you've been waiting your turn patiently for the killer question that you want to ask John Havlik, Captain. What is your killer question for John?
It's not really a big one, but like, did you do any other sports than do diving, or like, I don't know, just diving?
I tried to play lacrosse in high school because I grew up in Maryland, and everybody in Maryland plays lacrosse. I played baseball. I was a pretty good catcher, but I couldn't hit. And in lacrosse, I just wasn't very good. So one of my coaches told me, said, if you're going to swim, you should concentrate on swimming. And I made the decision my junior year in high school, and very glad that I did it. And I stuck with swimming. I could never be a diver because I would have
too hard. It
was too hard. There's no way about it.
John is a legend for listeners. John, at West Virginia University, they have the Legend Society. Not only is he in the Sports Hall of Fame, which very, very few people get in, but then they have this subset of a group called the Legend Society, and John became a legend last year. Now, he's been telling us that he's a legend for years and years, and we just denied it. But, I guess it's true now. He is now the legend. So, John, I got a question for you. I think of people who do things like leadership things in the military. I think of people in law enforcement. I think of people in like firemen and such. And you're not doing it for the money. And you weren't doing it for the money in the SEALs either. Why go through all the struggle? Why go through all the hardship? It's not like, in fact, you do so much clandestine work. People didn't even know what you're doing in the way that you're actually serving them and the country, and it's all sort of secretive. What is it that drives people like you, people in law enforcement, people in the military, people in the firemen, to do leadership and take the leadership route in the way that you do?
Well, I learned from day one that someone told me you won't get rich in the military, and that's very true. So I did it, and I think most guys do it for the uniqueness of what you're doing, the opportunity to serve my country was very honorable, and just I got to work with some really great people, so whereas I maybe didn't get paid as much as some others, I got to do some really cool stuff, and even though I didn't get a lot of money, the Navy paid me to work out, to jump out of perfectly good airplanes, to dive, to shoot guns and blow things up. So I was a pretty good offshoot to making a lot of money, like in other professions. So,
yeah, good. Boys, what other questions do you have? Here's your opportunity. You got a guy with all this wealth of leadership knowledge reaching out to us to help us learn leadership. What other questions do you have for Captain Havlik?
Mine is, how did you learn about the military, and how did you learn about, why did you want to go into the military?
Well, I grew up an Army brat. My dad was in the Army, so pretty much knew about the military from day one. I was born in a U.S. Army field hospital over in Munich, Germany. So my roots started from the day I came into this world. So, but I didn't never really wanted to go in the military. I joined the Navy because I wanted to coach swimming at the Naval Academy, and got the opportunity to do that. And when I was at the Naval Academy, I found out about the SEALs, and it sounded like a pretty good job. And so I changed everything I was doing, and went towards becoming an officer, and then into the SEAL program.
There you go. Good background. Alex.
So as you climbed the ranks of you going from like all of the, and then how did you stay humble through going like, oh well, I'm a SEAL now, and then not just going around being flashy to everybody?
Well, I would love to tell you that it's apparent you haven't read chapter 5 or 6 yet. So. But I started, when I became a SEAL, I became very cocky, and I readily admit it. And because, when they keep telling you you're doing the hardest, most physically and mentally demanding training in the military, you start to believe it. And then when you graduate, you feel like you can conquer the world. And I got a little carried away, and I got cocky. And but I think if you read the book, my cockiness kind of got me in trouble. And I had a little humbling experience, and it was good for me because I got kicked out of the Navy, and had missed something that I loved doing, and then I got the opportunity to come back in a second chance, and I took advantage of it. But I took a lot of lessons learned from the first time, and I really learned how to work with people and treat them like you want to be treated, instead of, hey, I'm the big Navy SEAL, and if you don't do what I do, I'm going to kick your butt or something, So that doesn't work. So that's
good lesson there. Speaking of humility, my kids don't believe that I can actually bench press more than you. Is it true? No. Hey, tell them about the.
How many push-ups can you do now?
I just do a couple of reps of bench press, and that's good. That keeps me strong. Hey, what advice would you have for these two guys coming up? Guys can get cocky. You've seen me get cocky. How do they get humility? How do they demonstrate humility? What are some just a couple of pointers that you would have for them?
Well, I think everybody experiences it's part of growing up, and the more success the better you are, you're going to get cocky. It's just part of the deal, and but you try to remember your roots. You try to remember what your parents taught you. Your core values should carry you no matter how old you are through life, and just try to be the best person you can be and treat others the way you would want to be treated. And that's the best advice I can give you.
That's good advice right there. Hey, guys, any final questions that you've got for John? I'm going to have him share one final story with you before he goes. But what questions might you have before we let John go off to the rest of his day?
I have, it's not really a question. It's just a comment kind of, but so Dad's friend from diving, I forgot his name. He came over a couple months ago for summer, and he said that Dad had bench press. When he was in high school, he bench pressed 300 pounds to get a free steak because his coach was going to offer a free steak. And he said that he would bench press 300 pounds.
I'm talking about right there. It's all about humility, John. It's all about humility.
I'd love to see that one. I never heard that story.
I think it might have been Higgy who I forget who it was that
Did you really bench 300?
Well, they apparently think I did. Hey, if that's what they think, I'll let people go on thinking that. No, I think I got I know I got up to 275. I think I did. I think I got 315. But that was back when I was like, 27 years old and didn't have a girlfriend and that kind of stuff. And so I was stronger then than I am now.
Absolutely.
But I did get the steak, I guess, for that. Alex, do you have a final question for John? All right. So here, John, before you let him go, tell him that ever important story, the 30-second rule that you learned going through Buds about the 30 seconds. Tell him about that.
Well, the quick story is during Hell Week, I almost quit. And I made a comment to somebody another classmate of mine that I was thinking of quitting. And somehow that got up to my instructors. And so when we finally had our first break after about 2 days of being up, my instructor called me over and he asked me why I wanted to quit. And I didn't really have a good reason for him. I was just cold, a little tired, and I guess tell everybody that I just needed a hug from my mother, so to speak, and just having one of those moments. And he just kind of told me as an officer to stop worrying about myself and start thinking about my men. And when I would do that, all my woes and all my aches and pains would go away, and I would take care of my men. And that was my job in the Navy. And so he went to get a cup of coffee, and he told me, hey, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee and I'll come back. You tell me whether you're going to quit or not. And when he was walking back to get a cup of coffee, he turned around and said, but don't make a decision in 30 seconds. You'll regret the rest of your life. And I knew right then that I didn't want to quit. So when he came back, he asked me what I was going to do. And I said, I'm going to stay with the class. And I'm glad I did. And we never talked about it. And I never thought about it again. So that's the best advice I can give you.
As great advice for life, right? When imagine that. Here he is in Bud's training. They get about 4 hours of sleep for the whole week. And he's getting ready to ring the bell to quit. And if he does, he doesn't become a Navy SEAL. And that person that really a leader in his life gave him advice that he could carry into the rest of his life, that don't do something in 30 seconds that you're going to regret for the rest of your life. And that's a great lesson to leave you two boys as you move forward in your leadership. Captain Havlik, thanks for being our first official guest on Two Boys and a Dad Learning About Leadership. And thank you, boys, for being polite, although you were chewing the whole time. You're still my boys. So good to give you grief. So
thanks, guys.
Thanks.